is ratepayer money in the city of Los Angeles could be used to build a project and privatize the workforce, putting my LADWP members out of work. On behalf of the 150,000 members collectively of the State Association of Electrical Workers, the Western States Council of Sheet Metal Workers, and the California State Pipe Trades Council, which do build things, I would say to my good friend, the Senator Wright, all 150,000 build things. We're opposed to this bill because it changes the dynamic with the public-private financing and now allows for no competitive bidding, none. The clause is even added in page 5 of the bill. The competitive negotiation process shall not require competitive bidding. Then, lower down in that section, it exempts these projects from the entire public contract code and the entire government code. How many members of this committee happen to go through the entire public contract code and government code to see perhaps what you might be waiving on these types of now publicly funded projects? The box I have beneath me is filled with every section of those codes. It's a large volume, but to give you a flavor of some of the things that will be exempted from these projects now: competitive bid requirements, public noticing of the bids, requirement for performance bonds, requirements in the procurement code that require for minority, women, and disabled veteran considerations, the open meeting laws of the government code, including the Brown and Bagley-Keene Act, sections that provide protections for whistleblowers, the False Claims Act, which allows the public agency to sue a vendor when they lie and willfully defraud, all the conflict of interest provisions of the government code. Now, the bill does reference 187-100 of the government code, which only applies to a government official who has a financial interest in the project. All the other sections of the conflict of interest code that prohibit things like city council members getting loans from people who are doing business with the city, all of those provisions exempted. The Public Records Act is no longer applicable to these types of projects in the way this bill is currently crafted. The code sections that specify how utility rates will be set. So if you allow these things, allow for utilities for them to do sewer and energy projects. The provisions that protect consumers when they have their power cut off and the procedures for which their power will be cut off. The Political Reform Act is within the government code. So the sections regarding things you have to report relative to one of these projects would be in question. The anti-discrimination sections of the government code, like the Fair Employment Act, which should apply to one of these projects. So it goes on and on and on. That's just a few of them. So our basic problem is, under the construct now, you could have a project almost entirely publicly financed, being sole source contracted without any requirements that there be any sort of transparency at all, and that's the basis for our opposition. Urge a no vote.
Vern Gehring, representing Food and Water Watch, a national consumer and community interest organization. We think P3s are a wonderful business plan for wealthy investors and national international corporations. It provides decades-long contracts negotiated behind closed doors, including a guaranteed profit throughout the duration. It offers no risk to the investor. All costs, public and private, direct and indirect, including corporate profits, are guaranteed to be paid for by user fees and taxpayers. The public retains all the liability for the exposure of these facilities because the facilities remain public facilities. The private investor is handed a no-competition contract. A competitive, captive pool of customers are made available to them. There'll be very little oversight because most middle and small communities that will be engaged with this will not have the resources to provide adequate oversight for a 35-year term of the contract. We think the notion of public-public partnership is a much smarter option for local governments to join together, pooling resources and sharing services. Currently, LAFCOs are required to periodically conduct municipal service reviews. One of the areas addressed within these reviews is to identify opportunities for local entities to share facilities and services. We think this is a much smarter beginning point to address these critical infrastructure needs. We urge your no vote. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, member Cesar Diaz on behalf of the State Building and Construction Trades Council. I definitely have to agree with Scott Wetch's comments here. Now, we typically have supported P3s. However, this bill does present a significant expansion to the way P3s are financed for all those reasons that he mentioned. But in addition, let me add add a little bit of a flavor here for what local school districts are utilizing what was primarily a public-private partnership through lease-leaseback agreements. Lease-leasebacks were meant to help finance school construction projects when there was a new development and the school district was lending a piece of land. They would get that particular piece of land built on by a private developer. Under the lease-leaseback agreements, that the private developer can sole source that entire construction project. Now, what's happening in current day is that school districts are utilizing one piece of that particular code, and instead not even having the financing provided by the developer, they're using that code and sole sourcing that construction project entirely. This is exactly what will happen with this bill. You will not see any private financing on any of these projects, except you'll see the exposure of this exploitation of this code for all these projects that are included in this particular bill. So for those reasons, we oppose.
Very good. If the rest of witnesses keep it concise, that would be great.
Janice Norman on behalf of the American Federation of State, County, Municipal Employees. We will not repeat any of the opposition that's been raised, but for all the reasons they raised, we would strongly oppose the bill as well.
Thank you.
Libby Sanchez on behalf of Laborers Local 777 and 792, gravely concerned about the impact on the public sector employees we represent and the draining of public coffers, which is a potential impact of this measure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joshua Golka with the California School Employees Association, representing classified school employees in school districts and community college districts, both which are covered under this legislation, who maintain, rebuild, improve, repair, and operate all things that are included in public-private partnership legislation. It's not just about construction, it's about all those other aspects too. Thanks. In opposition.
Very good.
Steve Baker with Aaron Reed and Associates for the Peace Officers Research Association of California, PORAC, and also the Orange County Employees Association.
Thank you. Any other witnesses? Very good. We'll move to questions from the committee. Mr. Leo.
First of all, I just wanted to say I've been generally supportive of public partnerships, but I do have concerns regarding this funding portion of this bill because, and it's questions that I've raised as people came to talk to me, is like, why isn't there a minimum commitment in this financing that the private would commit to a certain threshold? Because currently, as far as I understand, the private portion could they considered management or their expertise to consider their portion of the private financing, and it could be everything else would be on public dollars, shifting the risk to the public. And so I had serious concerns with that part. And why not make this a 2-year bill? Be able to. We've been asking some of the cities what have been the formulas in some of these agreements, so that we could see exactly how much private investment, private financing is actually being put forward in these projects, or are we seeing 99% be coming from public dollars? And so that's where I have a concern. Why not make it a 2-year bill, get that data, study some further, see how these have been working so far to answer those questions, because so far they have not provided me those answers.
Why don't you take a shot?
Mr. Chair, Assemblyman, I can give you a little bit of the overview nationally and internationally. The idea of trying to call out a certain percentage or an amount of private investment in a public-private partnership is really unheard of, and from our perspective, we would say for good reason. When you're talking about a potential scope of work that could include design, construction, financing, operations, and maintenance, or any combination of that, it is essentially impossible to set a bright line rule in terms of a percent or an amount. If the private entity provides a letter of credit that reduces the borrowing costs for the project, how does that get quantified? If the private entity takes overrun risk on construction or operations and maintenance, how do you value that? So instead of bright line tests, where the industry has gone and legislation on a national perspective has gone, is in those instances where public money is being contributed, the government agency has to assess whether doing it in that manner with a blend and under a statute like this creates additional value and benefits to the public in doing it that way versus the traditional way of design, bid, build with full public financing. So we've tried to address that with having a check and balance of they have to justify it if they're going to put public money into it.
Mr. Chair, if I could make another comment. Discussion was made earlier about the government code and the other things. I would direct you to 59.56 of the existing code. What Mr. Wetch was reading was current law relative to public-private partnerships. So this bill does not change existing law. What he was reading from was already referenced. This is existing law, and it says the competitive negotiation process shall not require competitive bidding. That's current law relative to those public-private partnerships. So he's referencing something, attributing it to the bill that is existing law.
Mr. Chair, if I might, Scott Wetch on behalf of the IBW, California State Pipe Trade, Sheet Metal Workers, Utility Workers. The difference here is the entire concept of the original 1993 Fred Aguirre bill was that if people were coming and contributing and financing a project with 100% private financing, that you would give them special allowances in the way that those projects were then going to be bid because they're putting up the money. Now this bill says, no, now you use the taxpayers' money. And in the state of California, since the beginning of this state, we've always held taxpayer projects to a higher level. We require things like transparency. There's a reason why we have all those provisions in the government code, in the public contract code. So what might have been appropriate prior to this bill is no longer acceptable when you're using taxpayer funds. That's the differentiation.
The point I'm making is that he attributed to the bill that's factually inaccurate. I just wanted to make reference to the fact that that's current law. It is not specified in the bill. And the message was leading to continue that we were changing law. That's factually wrong. We're not changing law. That's existing law. So there is not that change.
All right. Mr. Laley, you answer your question. Mr. Waisel.
Yes. Thank you. I wanted to ask Mr. Wetch where on the legislation, I'm looking at the bill itself, where on the bill does it make reference to the exemptions on the building code?
It's not the building.
You had mentioned
it's on section on page 5. That section at the bottom after the provision, the original legislation provided for a competitive negotiation. This bill, I believe, the sentence the competitive negotiation process shall not be require competitive bidding. But the difference here is that we're talking about public money. At the bottom of that provision, it says that these that agencies, the governmental agency soliciting proposals is not subject to any other provisions of the public contract code. This code, which is the government code, because this bill amends the government code, or any other statutory provision that relates to the public procurements. So that language exempts all of these projects from every section of the public contract code and every section of the government code. In the middle of that paragraph is where it references one. It recognizes that it exempts the government code, so it calls out one section of the government code, which is section 87-100. And section 87-100 is one very short provision within an entire chapter that deals with conflicts of interest, and only one very narrow type of conflict of interest. So that provision exempts the entire public contract code and the entire government code from these projects, and every section within them.
And public contract code usually has language relating to competitive bidding.
It does. It authorizes all sorts of different types of bidding processes that are specific to different types of projects.
Does it have any language relating to equal opportunity contracting?
There are sections within the public contract code that address equal opportunity issues. This bill also would have an impact on state private public partnerships, and in the government code and public contract code specific to state projects, there's very explicit requirements about set-asides that this bill would impact.
Is there something in the state's public contract code that needs to be removed for this program to work? I mean, what is the purpose for exempting that code?
Mr. Chair, Assemblyman, I'd like to clarify what we've just heard. I'm reading from the existing statute, not the senator's bill. The competitive negotiation process shall not require competitive bidding, 5956.5. The exemption
Can
from...
you address the page 5, lines 17 through 22 relating to the it says, well, specifically where it says the governmental agency soliciting proposals is not subject to any other provisions of the Public Contract Code.
Yeah, that is the existing statutory language. It is in the existing
in this bill.
Yeah.
In the existing statute.
For privately financed projects.
The current law. I also would say that this bill expressly excludes state projects. So that is not in the existing law, or the bill is to expand this to include state projects. These are local government projects. State finance projects, state agencies cannot use this bill. I also would say that the exemption as to the codes that are in the existing bill only apply as it relates to procurements. It does not apply to everything in those codes. It relates to procurements. So open meeting laws, what have you, that does not relate to procurements. That is still in effect. And I would not ever advise a client, a public agency client, that they had carte blanche.
So if we do use state funds, nonetheless, normally under a private finance project, the Public Contract Code wouldn't apply, you're saying. But when you use state-funded projects, it does apply normally?
No, it would apply in the normal course under either circumstance. I just wanted to clarify that this bill cannot be used on state-funded projects.
If that is so, why does it need to be called out in the bill?
Let me try this. Let me direct you to page 10 of the bill, line 39. Notwithstanding any provision of this chapter, neither the state or any state agency may directly or indirectly use any authority grant in this chapter, or may any governmental agency as defined in, so states cannot use the project. Mr. Wedge was wrong again.
The issue there is that local governments take on and build and construct projects that are state financed, and they even build projects on behalf of the state, where the state gives them the ability to build what otherwise would be a state project, and this bill would certainly apply to those. And again, the differentiation here is that the bill, the existing law, doesn't require competitive bids because we were talking about somebody else's money, and now we're talking about taxpayer money.
And you really need to read the
Mr.
rest of that sentence, the chapter. There's 4 things that are defined as state
let me just listen to what Mr. Can you say that again? I didn't hear what you said. Mr. Toppin?
It does say it can't be used for state projects, but then it defines the state projects, and they are somewhat limited. It is toll roads on state highways, state water projects, state park and rec projects, and state finance projects. That is not inclusive of all things that would be considered a state project.
What's a state finance project? If we put state money into one of these projects, isn't that a state finance project?
Not if it's not the complete financing mechanism for it. I think if we had a piece of local money, a piece of P3 money, and a piece of state money, that would not be a state finance project.
Couldn't you add that reference as a definition that you provide $1 toward a project and that's a state finance project?
I think that would be subject to litigation. That would be something a court would decide. I'm not going to decide it here what constitutes a state finance project.
So a bridge would qualify as let's say it was a state-operated bridge. It would qualify under this program.
Assemblyman,
there's no exemption here provided for bridges.
It says a state agency cannot use this authority, and it says a state, and it cannot, and no one can use this authority on a state project, which is a toll road on a state highway, a state water project, a state park and rec project, and a state financed project.
But you could use it for a local project.
I'm sorry. Can I read
No, I'm sorry.
Can I read the section?
Let me try it again. Caltrans, who would be involved in doing the bridge, would not be able to use the project. Caltrans is expressly prohibited from doing it. They're the only state agency that does bridges. They couldn't use it. Again, Mr. Wedge is just wrong.
But like in San Diego, we do some projects in partnership with Caltrans.
But again, now,
they're local roads,
well,
but they're
arguably, if you take that
use
line
state
of question,
funding.
given that the state of California often funds much of what we do locally, whether it be backfills or other kinds of money, you could make an argument that everything is a state project, and for that matter, everything could be a federal project, because all of the money that the state and locals and counties use gets intermingled. We're specifically here talking about those state agencies. To your point, the bridge, if it was operated by Caltrans, they could not use the fund. In the case of Long Beach, the Gerald Desmond Bridge could be used because the Gerald Desmond Bridge, while it might take state money, belongs to the city of Long Beach. So the city of Long Beach would be making the application and not the state of California. And that would mean even if the city of Long Beach received a fund from the state, it's still a bridge owned and operated by the city of Long Beach. That would be the distinction. By contrast, right next to the Gerald Desmond Bridge is the span suspension bridge. That bridge would, in fact, because it's operated by Caltrans, be ineligible for these funds. So there are two bridges within a mile of one another. One would be eligible, one would not be eligible.
I understand.
There really needs to be some clarification about the Gerald
And then
Desmond
let's
Bridge.
move on to the next.
All right.
We have
The
other
Gerald
others,
Desmond Bridge earlier this year was accepted by the CTC into the state highway system. The Gerald Desmond Bridge is not going to be a P3. The port, the city of Long Beach, Caltrans have decided to use the design build authority granted under a bill that passed a couple of years ago. It will be paid for with port funds and state highway funds. That is proceeding as a design build project and is not eligible to be a P3 under this bill.
Okay.
Very good. If I could ask the indulgence of on this item, we do have some members that are having to leave, so I want to lift the calls very quickly on the items that we have, and then we will resume with the hearing. So I appreciate the minute everyone catch their breath. So we're going to first lift the call on item number 1, SB 134 by Senator Corbett. Please call the absent members.
Current vote is 2-3. Alejo. Aye. Alejo, aye. Campos. Aye. Campos, aye. Davis. Hueso.
Aye.
Hueso, aye. Bill's out.
Very good. That measure is out. Next item on call, SB 152, Senator Pavley. Current vote is 2-2.
Alejo. Aye. Alejo, aye. Campos. Aye. Campos, aye. Davis. Hueso.
Aye.
Hueso, aye. Knight.
No.
Knight, no. Bill's out.
That measures out. Next item, item number 5, SB 214, Senator Wolk. Current vote is 2-3. Please lift the call.
Alejo.
Aye.
Alejo, aye. Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Davis. Hueso.
Aye.
Hueso, aye. Bill's out.
That measure is also out. Item number 6, Mr. Rubio, SB 267. Current vote 4-0.
Alejo.
Aye.
Alejo, aye. Bradford. Aye. Bradford, aye. Campos. Davis. Hueso.
Aye.
Hueso, aye.
Campos, aye.
Campos, aye.
Thank you. That measure is also out. Item number 10, SB 449, Senator Pavley. Current vote is 0-2.
Smythe. Alejo. Bradford. Campos. Davis. Hueso.
And that measure will remain on.
Bradford, aye.
That measure will remain on call. Item number 12, SB 536, DeSaulnier. Current vote 3-0.
Alejo.
Aye.
Alejo, aye. Bradford.
Aye.
Bradford, aye. Davis. Gordon. Aye. Gordon, aye. Knight. Norby.
No.
Norby, no.
That measure is also out. Thank you, members, for your indulgence. Thank you, Senator. We'll continue with the bill. Mr. Hueso, are your questions complete?
Yes.
Thank you. Other questions on this item? Very good. Then do we have a motion on the bill? Is there a motion on? Do we have a motion? Is there a second? Very good. Mr. Wright, Senator, if you'd like to address some of the comments in your close, you may.
Again, let me make clear, the references in the code relative to the government code, that's existing law for existing P3s. This bill doesn't change that. Part of what you heard was some of the things that are unclear in the code, and that's what we were trying to make clear. The opportunity here would be an option that would be given to a city. It's not a mandate. We're not saying that a city would have to take this as an option. But what I'm saying is that if a bridge in your community collapsed, or if you were running the risk of a bridge collapsing, or if you were running the risk that you were going to lose the ability of water conveyance systems, or if you had some other infrastructure project that was in need in that city, not a state agency, if that city made the determination that that was an option that they wanted to choose, this bill gives them the option. It doesn't mandate that they use it. I'm not arguing, members, that this bill represents the cheapest source of money. This should probably be something that that municipality uses after they've exhausted all of the other options that they have. In the budget bill that we just did, for example, we just knocked down redevelopment as a tool for local governments. I submit to you that some of your local governments are going to be looking at this kind of funding because you just took away one of the sources of funding that they would have. The Gerald Desmond Bridge in my district is being rebuilt. I referenced it because it needed to be rebuilt for roughly 12 years, and the city of Long Beach couldn't afford to do it. Yes, we did shift it, and there'll be some things that will make that work. But in that 12 years' time, as I said, they put wire under the bridge to stop falling chunks of concrete from falling on people's cars. But the bridge was such an integral part of the goods movement system that we couldn't afford to close it and we couldn't afford to fix it. So we were in that dilemma of just trying to patch it up and see how we would go. Am I saying this is the cheapest source of money? No. Am I saying this is the only source of money? No. Am I saying that this is what I would advise the city to do first? No. If they can get a grant from the state, that would be a good thing to do. I don't know if anybody's keeping score about California right now. Our bond rating is 50th out of the 50 states. We were determining yesterday whether or not Bill Lockyer would be able to get a RAND loan so that we could make payroll in September. So to say that local governments can just go out and get money, that's not quite as simple as it is. The city of Los Angeles not too long ago went out for a bond measure that they could not sell. The treasurer of this state just went through 2 iterations where he had bonds he could not sell. So if you can't sell bonds and you can't get the financing, the need, whether it's a bridge or a water conveyance system, still exists. The only thing we're talking about here is giving that municipality, not state government, but a municipality, a tool. Should they choose not to use it, that's their choice. We don't mandate that they use it. We don't give them the methodology that they use it. We say this is an option to you. If you choose not to take it, that's fine. All we're saying is that we should give all of the municipalities in the state of California, the water conveyance systems, the cities, the counties, the special districts, they should have the opportunity to look at this as a tool. If they choose to use it, fine. If they choose not to use it, that's their choice. All I'm asking you to do, ladies and gentlemen, is give them the choice of how they finance projects, given that we have restricted their access to capital with some of the things that we've done here in California. I would ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. We do have a motion and a second on the bill. Let's go ahead and call the roll. Item number 11.
The motion is do pass. Smythe.
Aye.
Smythe, aye. Alejo. Bradford. Campos. No. Campos, no. Davis. Gordon. No. Gordon, no. Hueso. Knight. Aye. Knight, aye. Norby. Aye. Norby, aye. Measure.
A measure is on call. Senator, to save you time, would you like to notice reconsideration in case the bill does not get out?
Yes.
Thank you. Very good. Senator Kehoe, thank you for your patience.
I do.
Senator, you have You have two bills, I believe.
Yes, sir.
Let's, if you don't mind, why don't we take item number 8? It does have support on both sides, which is, I'm sorry, item SB 436.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. I appreciate the opportunity to present the bill. First of all, I'd like to thank the Vice Chair, Assemblymember Alejo, for agreeing to principal co-author the bill. I appreciate your support and look forward to working with you through the rest of the process. Members, over the last several years, state and local agencies have developed a productive public-private partnership with nonprofits and special districts, not like the last public-private partnership. This has to do with holding lands for mitigation. Agencies typically don't want to hold and manage, public agencies such as state agencies don't typically want to hold these lands because of staffing costs and maintenance costs. There is a benefit to the land resource as well, because local nonprofits or special districts can often manage the land better and are in a position to identify and resolve problems locally and more quickly. Thank you. I appreciate that. The bill builds on public-private partnerships by allowing nonprofits and special districts to hold endowment funds
I'll second
for the land that they manage. All right. It is. Let me skip to the last paragraph.
There we go.
It's supported by the Council on Land Trust. Darla Ginsler has done a wonderful job of working through this. I would ask for your aye vote. There's no opposition to date.
Very good. Witnesses in support.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Darla Ginsler. I'm the director of the California Council of Land Trust and sponsor of the bill, and I'd like to thank Senator Kehoe and Assemblymember Alejo for working with us on this important item for us in California and how we manage mitigation lands. I'm happy to answer any questions, and thank you very much for hearing this bill, and I urge your aye vote.
Thank you.
Yes, John Arriaga on behalf of the Transportation Agency of Monterey County. We have been working on a similar bill with Assemblymember Alejo that went through this committee recently, and we're here in support of the bill.
Thank you.
Honorable Chair and members, Doug Houston representing the East Bay Regional Park District. Most recent set of amendments. We are now in support of the bill and appreciate your support. Thanks.
Thank you. Any opposition? Any other witnesses want to testify? Mr. Alejo?
Like I said earlier, I co-authored a very similar bill, but certainly would help speed up a lot of our important transportation projects, reduce the red tape. This bill had overwhelming bipartisan support, and I asked my colleagues to support this bill as well.
Thank you, Mr. Alejo.
Perfect. That's a great close. Let's go ahead and call the roll.
The motion is due pass, and we refer to the Committee on Natural Resources. Smythe.
Aye.
Smythe, aye. Alejo.
Aye.
Alejo, aye. Bradford. Campos. Campos, aye. Davis. Gordon. Hueso.
Yes.
Hueso, aye. Knight.
Aye.
Knight, aye. Norby. Norby, aye. Measures out.
Very good. That measures out.
Thank you, members. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Item number 3, SB 186.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Members, this bill authorizes the state controller to conduct audits or investigations on local entities when concerns are raised about mismanagement or violations of state law affecting local funds. This will ensure local governments carry out their financial operations with honesty and efficiency. We've dealt with a number of smaller communities in California over the last year where honesty and efficiency did not seem to be uppermost in the local electeds' minds. The controller can perform these audits based on credible documentation, including input from the local entity. This bill will sunset in January 2017. It will provide greater transparency and oversight. I think something that the people of California deserve. We, I think, have some opposition now from the League of Cities that just came on. Ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. Witness in support.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members. My name is Linda Lingbloom. I'm representing the State Controller's Office. Our office was contacted by a citizens group from the City of Bell a month before the Los Angeles Times broke the scandal in July of last year, but our audit authority was too limited to offer the necessary assistance and to properly look into the complaints raised. Our current authority only allows us to contact or to conduct an investigation or audit that can be linked to information found in the annual financial transactions reports submitted by the local agency. But keep in mind that unlike our counties, special districts, districts, and school districts, cities are not required by law to meet any state accounting and reporting guidelines or standards. So the financial reports Bell submitted to the state showed nothing out of the ordinary. However, eventually we were able to audit Bell after the interim city manager invited us in and asked us to conduct the audit. SB 186 would allow the Controller's Office to gather information to begin an investigation or audit if we are contacted and provided supporting documents. Our office strongly believes that the state has important stake when it comes to the use of all public funds, and SB 186 would give us the necessary authority to safeguard those funds. With me today is Walter Barnes from our Division of Audits. We thank the committee for a very thorough and thoughtful analysis, and Walter will address some of the issues raised in that analysis. Thank you.
Thank you.
Walter Barnes, Chief of Special Projects for the Audits Division in the Controller's Office. The analysis raised three specific issues. One, whether or not SB 186 had too broad an authority for the Controller. This issue was actually raised during this bill's transition through the Senate, and there were a number of amendments that were incorporated into the current bill to try to address that. One is that a decision to audit or investigate must be linked solely to a violation of financial requirements in state law or local ordinances or charters. This narrow definition ensures that the Controller is not going to engage in audits or investigations for non-financial issues, which was something that was of a concern. Also, the amendment added a requirement that the SEO contact the local agency before making a decision to proceed with an audit or investigation. In addition, the amendment included the requirement that the decision to proceed be based on creditable documentation, establishing a basis for making a decision, and provided a clear definition of what constitutes documentation. Finally, the amendment eliminated a provision that would have allowed audits or investigations based on financial viability or going concern issues, to ensure that this authority would focus on the narrow issue of violation of individual financial requirements. Now, we're open to amendments that would clarify the narrow intent that's intended by SB 186. The only amendments that we've seen in the city input basically seem to deal with financial viability issues, which again was not the intent of this particular bill, but if there are additional amendments, I think we're certainly open to it, as we were while we were moving through the Senate. The other issue is whether there's duplication between SB 186, SB 449, and AB 187. We discussed this briefly during the discussion on SB 449 this morning. We believe the current bills are intended to address separate issues. As I mentioned, 186 addresses individual issues related to possible violation of federal requirements. SB 449 addresses issues related to the overall financial viability of a local entity and is modeled on the current process which is used to assist local school districts with financial viability issues. AB 187 appears to provide authorization to BSA to identify local entities that may be in need of the services available that we would provide under SB 449. Again, we're open to amendments to try to clarify the separation of responsibilities and duties between these three bills. And certainly we can volunteer for SB 186 and SB 449. BSA would have to weigh in on AB 187. Finally, the inefficiencies, or is there inefficiencies or insufficiencies, I should say, in the current oversight authority? The SCO's current authority is limited to issues identified in the annual report of financial transactions, which is supposed to come into the Controller's Office 6 months after the end of each year. Such reports do not come in because of the 6-year requirement. This means that the violations of financial requirements can go undetected for up to 18 months. In addition, some local entities would rather pay the fine associated with not submitting a report rather than submit the report at all. Finally, a review of 5 years of reports from the City of Bell disclosed that none of the issues that were discovered in the audit that the Controller made were apparent in those particular reports. So we think that there is that our current authorities do not allow us to try to react quickly to issues addressing financial requirements, and so we think that's an appropriate thing for us to do.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in support? Opposition?
Natasha Carl for the League of California Cities. Also, again, with me, I have Lainey Milstein, the Finance Director for the City of Sacramento, who would like to say a few words and provide technical assistance on, or provide her technical expertise, on local government audits or any of the League's suggested amendments. We are opposed unless the bill is amended for several of the same reasons we spoke to earlier on SB 449. We do believe that there is duplication between several bills that are moving through the legislature, and that needs to be reconciled. Secondly, the bill gives the controller broad jurisdiction over local agencies. It allows the controller to audit or investigate if he or she believes that the agency does not comply with the financial requirements of state law, local charters, and local ordinances. We suggest that the bill be amended to limit state audits to ensuring compliance with state law or grant agreements where the state has a direct financial interest. Third, it lacks criteria, just like 449, leaving local agencies unaware of when the state audit, when the controller will come in and audit. Under the bill, the controller can audit an agency if he or she has reason to believe a local agency is not complying with financial requirements. This broad discretion leaves cities very confused about when the controller can act. We think the bill should be amended so that local agencies will know. And then finally, the bill would add costs to local agencies. It's unclear about who pays for the controller's new audits. Before conducting an audit, the controller must find that sufficient funds are made available. However, in a later section, the bill states that the local agency is responsible for any costs incurred by the controller in conducting these discretionary audits. Any cost associated with the discretionary audits performed by the state controller should be borne by the state and not by local agencies. Again, we think that the bill should have very narrow, clear, and compelling criteria for when the state can intervene, and this should be reserved for the most serious situations.
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
may I make a comment?
Please.
The discussions of amendments are, of course, not out of place. This bill was introduced February 7th, and the letter from the League of Cities is dated June 23rd. There's an outline of suggested amendments. We'd be happy to discuss those with you, but this has already been through the Senate as part of a package. We would have welcomed the suggestions far earlier. We could be presenting a bill that maybe both of us could agree on today instead of one where I'm just looking at an outline, not even language, of what you'd like to see happen. So I'd ask for the committee's indulgence on discussion of amendments today. We're not prepared to offer any or to take any. Thank
Very
you,
good.
Mr. Chairman.
Certainly. Are there any other witnesses in opposition?
Yes, good afternoon, Lainey Milstein. I'm the Finance Director for the City of Sacramento. And I just wanted to share some information with you that I think might be helpful in evaluating this bill. I think that it was implied by the Comptroller staff that there really are no rules or guidelines for local government auditing and accounting. And that's really not the case. I don't know if you've ever heard of GASB, Governmental Accounting Standards Board, but there are a plethora of rules for which local government is required to be responsive in the way that we account and report for all of our financial transactions. And so, you know, one of the concerns I know that the Comptroller's Office has expressed is that their annual financial transactions report doesn't provide the information that they need in order to kind of see the concerns that you may have. The Comptroller's Office sets the standards for which we report into, and I think that we had a discussion with staff about let's look at those and try to put something together that not only provides information that's useful for the state and the Comptroller's Office and at evaluating reporting local government financial transactions, but that something is also useful for those local governments who are providing the information. We currently are at GASB 54 and are expected to be responsive and report and accountable up to GASB 54. The financial transactions report is not quite there yet. Therefore, it means that we have to take all of our information and take that square peg and put it in the round hole to comply. So those are things that we'd like to work on to maybe find a place where we can all get better information.
Very good. Any other witnesses? Any tweeners? All right. Not this week. Good. Questions from the committee? Mr. Norby.
I'm kind of surprised at the bill because, as I said earlier, the Comptroller's Office seems perfectly capable of injecting itself into areas of responsibility that are not specified by law, but not necessarily prohibited either. These audits will be paid for by the state or by the city?
They are paid for by the city in the bill.
Okay. So if the audit is done at the city and they find nothing wrong, then the city is still supposed to pay, or is it sort of like in a civil lawsuit? If you're found not guilty, you can get compensated for your legal costs?
As the bill is written now, Mr. Norby, the local jurisdiction is required to pay for the cost of the audits.
Okay.
But the audit would be conducted only after there is some evidence or complaints put forward that there's some mismanagement occurring, whether it's internal or external.
Okay. I mean, the IRS audits, and it takes our time when they do, but I don't think they send us a bill for the federal government's time. But as you say, maybe there's some suspicion there. The concern I have is that anyone who's ever signed an FPPC report knows that, I mean, these reports are very, very complicated. You can always find something wrong with them. And I guess the question is it substantive or is it more of a technicality? And if this just gives the Comptroller's Office a license to conduct unlimited auditing at the expense of cities, then there's no motivation for them to have any restraint at all and to justify them. I mean, they can always find something wrong. I mean, if you look at the city's reporting, you can always find something there that's wrong, and then the question is really substantive. So I'm concerned about how overly broad this is. I know there have been abuses. Yes. Bell is certainly an example of one. On the other hand, Bell is a very compact city of maybe 20, 30,000 people. It's one city of almost 500. And while we don't want to underreact, to overreact to one thing is sort of like passing a whole new criminal law after every murder, which sometimes we do, but normally existing laws are sufficient to take care of that. So that's my concern, is the broadness of this. For better or for worse, the sovereigns of a city are the voters of that city, not the state controller. And I'm concerned about the imbalance of power and over discretionary power this might have at city expense. So those are my concerns. I'm sure you share them.
I do to a certain extent, Mr. Norby, and you're right on the point of what's enough and when does it cross over to too much. In the case of Bell, where millions of dollars were misspent, mismanaged, self-dealing, it went on for years without any kind of public exposure, although there had been some complaints. If we were able to, if the controller had the authority then, he may have been able to just publicly audit what was going on there. It's not a matter of a prosecution at this point. It's simply exposing the facts of the matter, and it would have been helpful. It does build on authority the controller already has, and I think it's appropriate.
Okay.
Just on the general basis, corruption doesn't serve any of us, and as the and AFSCME's comment on the bill said, in a time of fiscal crisis, one clear necessity is for the development of greater legislative oversight.
Right. But corruption can also go both ways. And when you empower one person with unlimited auditing authority, that power can also has to be properly limited.
Yes. But we are talking audits, you know, a tracking of the facts, not a prosecution. And sunshine, you know, is the best medicine. An audit helps reveal what the facts of the matter are.
One of the questions, one of the speakers said that there were some citizens that complained to the Comptroller's office. I think it was a matter of a few months before the LA Times report came out. The LA Times report then did come out, and very quickly a series of events came where the citizens of Bell took power back over their own city. So I don't know that at that point a few months would have really mattered. I mean, this thing had gone on for years, while the Comptroller audit would have taken probably several months in and of itself. By that time, the Free Press did its job, and an alert citizenry did it as well. So for all the problems we had in Bell, I think I'd also say that in the end, democracy did work. There is a recall. There are tools that can be currently used without expanding them. So I'm probably more comfortable with those existing tools, Mr. Chair, than giving one person this expanded authority.
If I could just respond here, I think the issue that we're trying to say here is that the couple of months between when the citizens came to us and when the LA Times released the story is a small amount of time. We realize that. I think what's happened, though, is that the Comptroller's audit, the Comptroller's information that provided from the audit, provided the citizens with, in Bell, with enough information to understand how the issues had developed and been carried out by their board, their council, as well as their administrator, something that they didn't have and didn't have access to without the information that we had provided to them. The other thing I would say is that ever since the City of Bell has come out, and by the way, this is not limited just to the City of Bell. Our experiences with the County of Modoc and a couple of others are also important here, is that we're getting more information from the citizens and residents of other cities and counties and local governments who are coming to us at a time before a agency reaches the tipping point of a Bell, so that we can try to determine whether or not there are issues going on more quickly to try to avoid the length of time that goes on that results in Bell. And again, we've tried to make sure that this is narrowly focused on the issues affected by failure to follow specific financial requirements in law.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the committee? Very good. Senator, if you'd like to close.
I ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. Do we have a motion on the bill? I will provide a motion. Is there a second? Senator, we are absent some members at the moment. We will get them back, and we should get a second and get a vote. Would you like to preempt reconsideration so you don't have to come back in case the bill does not get out?
Thanks. I will do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chairman.
you. All right, Senator Hancock. Senator, let's take up SB 555 first, if we would, which is item number 14.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much, members who are here. I appreciate you. SB 555 allows general law cities and counties to use a voluntary financing tool to install energy and water efficiency improvements that charter cities and counties already can use. It removes the primary financial hurdle that deters most property owners from undertaking energy efficiency improvements, the upfront costs and the payback time, through long-term, low-interest, property-secured financing, so that if property owners sell the property prior to the end of the repayment, the new owner takes over the incremental payments, and the payments are paid off on the annual property tax bill. Property owners who voluntarily decide to opt into the program to finance energy and water improvements realize immediate savings on their utility bills, therefore increasing their household income, and can put that obviously back into the economy in terms of purchases of services and goods, thereby allowing us to create more jobs. The measure is very similar to SB 279, which I carried in 2009. It received bipartisan support in both houses. I'm hoping for bipartisan support again. It's supported by the California Association of Realtors, by utilities, by labor, by environmental organizations, and I would ask for your aye vote.
I'll move the bill.
Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer West. I'm with the California Municipal Utilities Association. We're strongly in support of this bill. As the Senator mentioned, it would establish a voluntary mechanism to help finance water conservation and energy efficiency projects. So we think this will create a very important new financing mechanism for homeowners, and we very much appreciate work on this bill. Thank you.
Christopher Carlisle with California Association of Realtors in support of the bill. As has been mentioned, this bill would authorize an alternative procedure for forming CFDs in which parcels within the territory may be annexed to the CFD and subjected to the special tax only upon the approval of the parcel owner. And as has been noted, this will allow those property owners that opt into the program to be assessed and finance the installation of energy efficiency and renewable energy improvements at low interest rates and over a number of years. As such, we ask for your aye vote.
Very good. Are there any other witnesses in support?
Yes, Chair, members, Rachel O'Brien, on behalf of the U.S. Green Building Council, the California Advocacy Committee, we're in support and like to associate ourselves with the comments previously made.
Marlene Dumaine with the East Bay Municipal Utility District, and we are very aggressive in promoting water conservation in our service area. We serve 20 cities, and we think this measure will greatly help with water conservation.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in support? Opposition? Very good. Senator, if you'd like to close.
Again, this is a way to help property owners meet goals that they have for water conservation, energy conservation, saving money so that they can create jobs by purchasing throughout in other aspects of the economy. I would ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. We do have a motion and a second on this item. If we could please call the roll.
The motion is Dukas. Smythe.
Aye.
Smythe, aye. Alejo. Aye. Alejo, aye. Bradford. Campos.
Aye.
Campos, aye. Davis. Gordon. Hueso. Knight. Norby.
Wessel.
All right, I'm back.
Your vote.
Yeah, I'm here. Are you taking the roll?
No.
Support. I heard the testimony on the video. In support. Yeah.
Hueso, aye. So we need one.
Okay, that measure is on call. If we could track down the absent members, so we can lift the call on a few other items that we do have on on call. Senator Hancock, what I'm going to do on item number 7 is we're going to hold that in the committee this week, and you'll look to possibly have a hearing next week before we wrap.
I would appreciate that very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So we'll hold that bill in committee.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
He's looking at me like I'm could have killed you guys. I could have killed you too.
Sorry.
Could have killed you guys. I was like, I can't believe it. So will you just leave?
Ask for Ask for
Yeah, I know exactly. Okay, Mr. Norby's here.
I could have waited, but
I should
he helped here.
And he was going to support it, and he left.
Yeah, get Matt in here. We can't find him.
Yeah. I just was like,
Did we
this.
vote on both bills, the package?
No, I just told him what happened.
Well, Hancock has their package, aren't they, two bills?
We took up one. The her other bill, Davidson ran for her own things. She will not have the votes to get the bill out.
Okay.
I can't do any replacement members.
So you're going
because
to
we
hold it
started
over to another
So I'm
hearing?
holding the committee.
Oh,
holding the
good
bill,
for you.
So
Okay.
then we'll take it up next week.
Okay.
So, I mean, I'm not going to bill, but it's.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's too much.
All right, members, we still have a few items on call. We have item number 3, SB 186. That bill has a motion, but it does not have a second. So we would be looking for a second on item number 3, SB 186. Okay, we do have a second from Mr. Gordon. Okay, so we can now call the roll on item number 3, SB 186. Senator Kehoe.
The motion is do pass and re-refer to the Committee on Appropriations. Smythe. Alejo. Bradford. Campos. Davis. Gordon. Hueso. Knight.
No.
Knight, no. Norby?
No.
Norby, no.
Very good. That measure fails. Reconsideration is granted. Item number 10, SB 449. Senator Pavley. Current vote is 1-2. Please call the absent members.
Smythe, Alejo, Campos.
Can you say what bill that is again?
It is SB 449.
Campos, Davis, Gordon, Hueso.
That measure fails. Reconsideration is granted. Item number 11, SB 475, Senator Wright. Current vote is 3-2. Please call the absent members.
Alejo, Bradford, Davis, Hueso.
That measure also fails. Reconsideration is granted. Item number 14, SB 555, Senator Hancock. Current vote is 4-0.
Bradford, Davis, Gordon. Aye. Gordon, aye. Knight.
No.
Knight, no. Norby. No. Norby, no.
That measure is also out. I believe, members, if you do have to add on, please make yourself available to Dixie. We will likely be having a hearing next week just for vote only on these items for reconsideration, as well as the one item that we are currently holding in committee, item number 7, SB 310. We'll leave the roll open for another 5 minutes.